Have you ever wondered why that relationship that felt so perfect at the beginning left you feeling empty and confused? Why the man who seemed so attentive suddenly made you question your own reality? Why the love that promised you everything ended up taking away your peace of mind? If you're a woman over 40, 50, or beyond, you've lived enough life to know what real love should feel like. You've experienced relationships, you've learned from mistakes, you've grown wiser with each passing year. But here's what many women in their prime don't realize. Toxic men specifically target your wisdom, your experience, and your emotional maturity. They've evolved their tactics to bypass your defenses, and they're betting on one dangerous assumption that you'll confuse their manipulation for the mature love you've been waiting for. Today, we're going to expose 6 toxic behaviors that predatory men disguise as love, specifically when targeting older women. These aren't the obvious red flags you learned about in your 20s. These are sophisticated manipulation tactics designed to exploit your life experience, your desire for genuine connection, and yes, even your hard-earned emotional intelligence. Welcome back to the Heart Code, where we decode the hidden patterns in relationships and empower you with the knowledge to protect your heart without closing it off to genuine love. Before we dive deep into these toxic behaviors, I want you to do something for me. If this topic resonates with you, if you've ever felt confused about whether someone's behavior was love or manipulation, hit that like button right now. Your engagement helps this message reach other women who need to hear it. And if you're serious about protecting yourself while staying open to real love, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We're building a community of emotionally intelligent women who refuse to settle for anything less than authentic love. Also, drop a comment below, sharing your experience. Have you encountered any of these behaviors? Your story might be the validation another woman needs to trust her instincts. And if you find real value in this content, if it helps you dodge a bullet or recognize a pattern you've been trapped in, consider supporting this channel with super thanks. Your support allows us to keep creating this critical content that YouTube's algorithm often suppresses because we're telling uncomfortable truths. Now, let's get into these 6 toxic behaviors that are being sold to you as love. Toxic behavior are shown. Intensive early attention disguised as finally meeting my equal. Let's start with the most dangerous one, because it's the hardest to recognize. When a man in his 40 seconds, 50 seconds, or 60 seconds suddenly showers you with an intensity of attention that feels different from anything you've experienced before, your first instinct might be to think you've finally met someone who truly appreciates you. After years of feeling invisible or taken for granted, here's someone who sees you, really sees you, and isn't afraid to show it. He texts you good morning and good night every single day. He wants to know about your day in exhaustive detail. He's fascinated by your stories from your youth, your career journey, your past relationships. He listens, really listens when you talk about your dreams that you thought you'd given up on. He remembers small details you mentioned in passing. He asks thoughtful questions. He makes you feel like the most interesting woman in the world. This feels like the mature love you've been waiting for, doesn't it? Finally, a man who has the emotional capacity to be fully present. Finally, someone who values your mind as much as your appearance. Finally, a partner who understands that real intimacy is built through deep conversation and genuine interest. But here's what you need to understand. Genuine interest builds gradually. Real appreciation unfolds over time as someone actually gets to know you. What you're experiencing isn't mature love. It's called love bombing, and it's specifically calibrated for women with your level of life experience. Let me explain how this works. Predatory men know that women over 40 have usually experienced relationships where they felt unseen or undervalued. Maybe you were in a long marriage where your partner stopped being curious about you. Maybe you've dated men who were emotionally unavailable. Maybe you've spent years focusing on raising children or building a career, while your own emotional needs took a back seat. You've arrived at this stage of life with a deep hunger to be truly known and appreciated. The toxic man exploits this hunger. He doesn't actually want to know you, he wants to consume you. Every question he asks is gathering intelligence about your vulnerabilities, your dreams, your fears, and your insecurities. Every compliment is strategically placed to make you dependent on his validation. Every deep conversation is creating an artificial intimacy that bypasses your natural defenses. Think about it this way. When you meet a genuine friend, even someone you click with instantly, there's a natural rhythm to how you get to know each other. You share a little, they share a little. Some conversations go deep, others stay light. There are comfortable silences. There are moments when you're both busy with your own lives. The friendship deepens through consistent, moderate engagement over time. But this man isn't following that natural rhythm. Within days or weeks, he's acting like he knows you better than people you've been friends with for years. He's making statements about your character, your nature, your essence, as if he has access to your soul. He's creating inside jokes and shared references at a pace that should take months to develop naturally. He's talking about future plans together before you've even established whether you're compatible in the present. This is intensive attention, and it's a manipulation tactic. But why does it work so well on mature women specifically? Because you've been taught that the problem with men is that they don't communicate enough, don't share their feelings enough, don't invest enough emotional energy. So when a man shows up who seems to have overcome all those typical male limitations, who is emotionally articulate and intensely focused on you, your brain interprets this as finally finding an evolved man. Your guard drops. You think you've found the exception to the rule. But here's the dark truth. The most dangerous manipulators are the ones who have studied what women want and learned to fake it perfectly. They're not emotionally evolved, they're emotionally calculating. Every vulnerable moment they share with you is strategic. Every seemingly spontaneous romantic gesture was planned. Every "I've never felt this way before" statement has been said to a dozen women before you. Let me give you some concrete examples of what this looks like. In practice, he might call you 3 or 4 times a day in the first week of knowing you, always with a reason that sounds legitimate. "I was just thinking about something you said and wanted to hear your thoughts. I heard this song that reminded me of our conversation. I'm making dinner and wondered what your favorite meal is." Each call individually seems sweet. Together, they're creating a pattern of constant contact that starts to feel normal, even necessary. He might write you long, thoughtful text messages that read like poetry. These messages talk about how meeting you has changed his perspective on life, how your wisdom and beauty have awakened something in him he thought was dead. He might reference specific moments from your conversations, showing that he was really paying attention. These messages make you feel seen and valued in a way you haven't felt in years, maybe ever. He might share vulnerable stories from his past at an inappropriate pace. Within the first few dates, he's telling you about his childhood traumas, his past heartbreaks, his deepest insecurities. This creates a false sense of intimacy because we're taught that vulnerability equals connection. But real vulnerability is something you earn gradually through proven trustworthiness. Strategic vulnerability is something manipulators deploy rapidly to create artificial bonding. He might mirror your values, interests, and communication style with uncanny precision. If you mention you love hiking at sunrise, suddenly he reveals that sunrise hikes are his spiritual practice. If you talk about your love for jazz music, he remembers the first jazz concert that changed his life. If you communicate in long, thoughtful paragraphs, he matches that style. If you're brief and witty, he adapts. This mirroring makes you feel like you've found your perfect match, but it's actually him showing you a customized reflection of yourself. He might rush physical intimacy while framing it as deep spiritual or emotional connection. I don't normally move this fast, but what we have is different. Age has taught me to recognize something real when I find it. We're both mature adults who know what we want. These statements use your age and experience against you, suggesting that having boundaries about pacing means you're playing games or being immature. He might create shared secrets or special knowledge early on. I've never told anyone this before, but I trust you. This is just between us. You understand me in a way no one else does. These statements are isolating you and making you feel special simultaneously. They're creating an us against the world dynamic before you've even established whether there should be an us. Now, how do you distinguish this toxic, intensive attention from genuine interest? Here are the key differences. Genuine interest respects your boundaries and your pace. If you say you need a day to yourself, a good man responds with understanding and gives you space. A manipulator responds with hurt feelings, excessive checking in, or subtle guilt trips. I understand you need space. I just miss you so much. Of course, take all the time you need. I'll just be here thinking about you. These responses sound supportive, but are actually applying pressure. Genuine interest is consistent, but not consuming. A good man maintains his own life, interests, and friendships while getting to know you. You never get the sense that you're his entire world, or that he's abandoned himself to pursue you. A manipulator makes you his sole focus, which initially feels flattering, but eventually becomes suffocating. His whole life seems to revolve around you, which sounds romantic until you realize it's actually a strategy to make your whole life revolve around him. Genuine interest asks questions and actually listens to the answers, even when those answers are inconvenient or disappointing. A good man wants to know the real you, including the parts that might mean you're not compatible. A manipulator asks questions to gather data about what you want to hear, then tells you exactly that. He has a mysteriously perfect response to everything you share. Red flags get dismissed or reframed. Incompatibilities get minimized. Genuine interest builds gradually and allows for natural ebbs and flows. Some days you connect deeply, other days you're both busy with life. Some conversations are profound, others are mundane. There's space for the relationship to breathe and develop organically. Manipulative, intensive attention maintains constant high intensity. Every interaction is charged with emotion. Every conversation is supposedly life-changing. There's no room for the mundane reality of two people simply getting to know each other. Genuine interest is interested in your whole life, including the parts that don't directly involve him. A good man wants to meet your friends, supports your existing relationships, encourages your hobbies and interests, even when he doesn't share them. A manipulator is intensely interested in you, but mainly in the parts of you that relate to him. Your friends become obstacles. Your independent interests become things he gently discourages or makes you feel guilty about pursuing. So, what should you do if you recognize this pattern? First, slow things down intentionally and watch how he responds. Say something like, "I'm really enjoying getting to know you, and I want to make sure we're building something solid. I think we should pace ourselves a bit." A healthy man will respect this. An unhealthy man will respond with anxiety, pressure, or accusations. "Are you losing interest? Did I do something wrong? I thought you felt the same connection I do." These responses are designed to make you reassure him and abandon your boundary. Second, maintain your existing life and relationships. Don't allow his intensive attention to pull you away from friends, family, hobbies, or routines that matter to you. A healthy relationship should add to your life, not replace it. If you find yourself canceling plans, neglecting responsibilities, or distancing from people who care about you because you're so caught up in this new connection, That's a red flag. The right person will fit into your life and enrich it. The wrong person will become your life and impoverish everything else. Third, notice whether his attention feels good or feels addictive. Good attention nourishes you and makes you feel more like yourself. Addictive attention creates anxiety, makes you constantly check your phone, and leaves you feeling incomplete when you're not receiving it. If you're starting to organize your day around his messages, feeling anxious when he takes longer than usual to respond, or finding that your mood is completely dependent on his attention, that's not love, that's dependency being deliberately created. Fourth, talk to trusted friends or family members about this new relationship. Describe specific behaviors without the romantic interpretation. He texts me 15 times a day. Sounds different than, he's so attentive and can't stop thinking about me. He told me he loves me after 2 weeks. Sounds different than, he's not afraid to express his feelings. People who love you and aren't under the influence of his attention can often see patterns you're too close to recognize. Fifth, give it time. I know this is hard when everything in you wants to dive in, but here's what I can promise you. If this is real, it will still be real in 3 months, 6 months, a year. If this is manipulation, it cannot sustain itself under the light of time and reality. Manipulators need to move fast because their mask inevitably slips. Genuine love can be patient because it has nothing to hide. Remember, you've earned your wisdom through decades of life experience. Don't let a manipulator use your desire for mature love against you. The right man will respect your need for healthy pacing. The wrong man will pressure you to move faster than your gut tells you is wise. Trust that gut. It's trying to protect you. Toxic behavior #2. Strategic vulnerability disguised as finally a man who can open up. This one is particularly insidious for mature women because we've spent decades being told that men don't share their feelings, that emotional availability is rare, that if we find a man who can be vulnerable, we should hold on to him. So when a man opens up to us early and often, sharing his deepest fears, past traumas, and emotional wounds, we interpret this as a gift. We see it as a sign of trust, a mark of emotional evolution, proof that he's doing the inner work. But what if I told you that some of the most emotionally destructive men have learned to weaponize vulnerability, that they've figured out that mature women, especially, are drawn to men who appear to be working on themselves, confronting their past, and seeking emotional growth? That these men have turned vulnerability into a manipulation tactic that's almost impossible to recognize until you're already deeply enmeshed? Let me be clear. Genuine vulnerability is beautiful and necessary for intimacy. Real emotional openness is what creates true connection. But there's a crucial difference between authentic vulnerability and strategic vulnerability, and learning to tell them apart could save you years of emotional devastation. Strategic vulnerability is when a man shares personal information not to create genuine connection, but to achieve specific, manipulative goals. He's not opening his heart, he's opening a door to your empathy, your nurturing instinct, and your desire to help heal someone you care about. Every tear, every confession, every moment of seeming emotional breakdown is calculated to bind you to him, to make you feel responsible for his emotional well-being, and to position himself as too fragile to be held accountable for his harmful behavior. This tactic is especially effective with women over 40 for several reasons. You've developed your emotional intelligence over decades. You've learned to read between the lines, to see when someone is hurting even when they don't say it. You've probably spent years in relationships where you wished your partner would open up more, share more, let you in more. You may have raised children, which developed your nurturing instincts and your desire to help heal emotional wounds. You've also probably experienced your own healing journey, which makes you sympathetic to others who are supposedly on theirs. All of these beautiful qualities, your empathy, your emotional intelligence, your capacity to nurture, your respect for the healing process become vulnerabilities in the hands of a man who has learned to fake emotional openness. So what does strategic vulnerability look like in practice? First, it happens too fast and too intensely. Within the first few dates, he's sharing information that should take months of established trust to disclose. He's telling you about childhood abuse, past betrayals, his deepest insecurities, his mental health struggles. Each story is heartbreaking and positions him as a survivor, someone who has overcome adversity. You're moved by his apparent courage in sharing these painful experiences. You feel honored that he trusts you enough to be this open. But here's the reality. People who have genuinely processed their trauma know how and when to share it appropriately. They understand that dumping heavy emotional content on someone you barely know is inappropriate and unfair. They have a therapist, close friends, or family members they process with. They don't use their trauma as an opening gambit in a new romantic relationship. When a man shares traumatic experiences very early on, he's not demonstrating trust. He's testing your empathy and setting up a dynamic where you feel responsible for his emotional well-being. He's also preemptively excusing future bad behavior. I'm sorry I reacted that way. My ex really damaged my ability to trust. I know I should have communicated better, but my childhood taught me to shut down. Every future transgression now has a built-in excuse rooted in the trauma he shared with you. Second, his vulnerability is always positioned to make you feel special or responsible. I've never told anyone this before. I don't usually open up like this, but something about you makes me feel safe. You're the first person who's really understood what I went through. These statements are designed to make you feel chosen, special, needed. They create a sense of obligation. If you're the first person he's trusted in this way, doesn't that mean you owe him your patience, your understanding, your continued presence, even when his behavior becomes problematic? Third, his emotional disclosures come with an implicit or explicit request for you to fix him. He's not saying, "This is something I'm working on with my therapist." He's saying, "This is something I've struggled with my whole life, and I don't know if I'll ever heal from it." He presents himself as broken but fixable, and you, with your wisdom and nurturing nature, might be the one to finally heal him. This is catnip to many mature women. We've developed skills, we've learned things, we've done our own inner work. The idea that we could help someone else on their healing journey feels meaningful. It gives purpose to all the pain we've survived. If our experience of overcoming hardship can help this man become whole, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that what deep love looks like? No. It's what codependency looks like. It's what a unilateral emotional burden looks like. It's what positioning yourself as his unpaid therapist while neglecting your own needs looks like. Fourth, his vulnerability is inconsistent and convenient. He's emotionally open when it serves him, when he needs your sympathy, when he's explaining away bad behavior, when he's pulling you closer. But when you need emotional support, when you express hurt or disappointment, when you try to have a difficult conversation about his behavior, suddenly he shuts down. "I can't handle conflict right now. My anxiety is too high. You're triggering my trauma from my ex who used to criticize me constantly. I'm working on my communication, but I'm not there yet. Can we table this?" Notice the pattern? His vulnerability is always available to generate your compassion, but never available to take accountability. He can cry about his difficult childhood, but can't hear feedback about his hurtful behavior. He can share his fears of abandonment, but won't acknowledge when he's being controlling. He can talk endlessly about his healing journey, but never actually changes any patterns. Fifth, his emotional disclosures create a sense of urgency and drama. Normal relationships have emotional texture. Sometimes things are calm, sometimes they're intense, mostly they're somewhere in between. But with strategic vulnerability, There's always something happening emotionally. He's always processing something, always in crisis, always on the edge of a breakthrough or a breakdown. This constant emotional intensity makes you feel like the relationship is deep and meaningful, when actually it's just exhausting and destabilizing. You find yourself always in caretaking mode, always managing his emotions, always walking on eggshells to avoid triggering him. And because he's shared so much about his past trauma, you understand why he's triggered, which makes you feel guilty for feeling frustrated. He's not manipulating you, he's just wounded. He's not being controlling, he's just scared of being hurt again. He's not avoiding accountability, he's just not ready to face certain things yet. Sixth, his vulnerability is often paired with subtle or overt criticism of you for not being vulnerable enough. I've shared so much with you, but I feel like you're holding back. I'm putting myself out there, but I don't feel like you're meeting me halfway emotionally. Why is it so hard for you to open up to me? These statements position him as the emotionally courageous one and you as the emotionally withholding one, even though what's actually happening is that you have healthy boundaries about appropriate pacing of emotional disclosure, and he doesn't. This reversal is crazy-making. You're the one being emotionally healthy, but he's making you feel like you're the problem. And because you're a mature woman who has done inner work, you take his criticism seriously. Maybe he's right. Maybe you are being guarded. Maybe your past experiences have made you too cautious. So you start forcing yourself to match his inappropriate level of emotional disclosure, which makes you feel unsafe, but unable to pinpoint why. Let me give you a real-world example of how this plays out. Meet Sarah, a 52-year-old woman who had been divorced for 5 years when she met Michael at a charity fundraiser. Michael was 58, distinguished, well-spoken, and seemed emotionally mature. On their second date, over a quiet dinner, Michael teared up while telling Sarah about his ex-wife's affair and how it had shattered his ability to trust. He talked about the therapy he'd done, the work he was still doing on himself. He said Sarah's kindness and wisdom made him feel like maybe he could learn to trust again. Sarah was deeply moved. Finally, a man who wasn't afraid to be real, to show his heart. Over the next weeks, Michael continued to open up about his difficult relationship with his father, about his struggles with depression, about his fear that he was too damaged for a healthy relationship. Each disclosure was followed by a statement about how Sarah made him feel seen and safe. Sarah felt needed in a way she hadn't felt in years. Her ex-husband had been emotionally shut off. Her adult children were busy with their own lives. Here was someone who valued her emotional wisdom, who saw her as a partner in healing. She dove in, becoming Michael's confidant, his cheerleader, his emotional support. But over time, Sarah started noticing things. When she tried to talk to Michael about feeling overwhelmed by his constant emotional needs, he shut down completely. "I'm sorry I'm such a burden," he'd say, which wasn't what she meant at all. When she asked him to be more considerate about calling her at work for emotional support, he said, "I thought you wanted me to lean on you. I guess I was wrong about what we have." When Sarah expressed hurt about Michael canceling their plans last minute, he said her criticism was triggering his anxiety and making his depression worse. Was she really going to prioritize her hurt feelings over his mental health? Sarah found herself apologizing for having needs, walking on eggshells, and feeling guilty for every boundary she tried to set. 6 months in, Sarah realized she was exhausted, anxious, and had started neglecting her own friendships and self-care. Michael was still on his healing journey, still having emotional crises, still needing her constant reassurance and support, but nothing was getting better. He wasn't actually healing, he was just creating an endless cycle of emotional crisis that kept Sarah bound to him through guilt and sympathy. That's what strategic vulnerability looks like when it fully takes hold. So how do you tell the difference between genuine vulnerability and strategic vulnerability? Genuine vulnerability is balanced with emotional responsibility. A truly open person shares their feelings and their struggles, but they also take responsibility for them. They might say, "I'm having a hard time with anxiety today, so I might be quieter than usual," but they don't make their anxiety your responsibility to manage. They work with a therapist or have healthy coping mechanisms. They don't expect you to fix their mental health. Strategic vulnerability dumps emotional responsibility onto you. Every feeling he has becomes something you need to manage, accommodate, or fix. His emotions are always your problem, but your emotions are your problem too. You're responsible for his well-being and your own, while he's responsible for neither. Genuine vulnerability includes accountability. When someone is truly working on themselves, they can hear feedback even when it's uncomfortable. They might say, "You're right, that wasn't okay, and I can see how my past doesn't excuse my present behavior." They can apologize without making you feel guilty for being hurt. They can change problematic patterns, not just explain them. Strategic vulnerability uses past trauma to avoid present accountability. Every piece of feedback is met with a trauma story that explains why the behavior happened and implies that understanding his trauma means accepting his behavior. Change never comes, only explanations. Genuine vulnerability strengthens you both. When someone authentically opens up in a healthy way, it creates mutual intimacy. You both feel more connected, more understood. Their vulnerability invites yours in a balanced way. You feel enriched by the emotional depth, not depleted by it. Strategic vulnerability depletes you while sustaining him. His vulnerability is a one-way street. You give emotional energy, he takes it. You feel drained, he feels supported. The relationship becomes a therapy session where you're the unpaid therapist and he's the permanent patient. Genuine vulnerability exists within boundaries. An emotionally healthy person knows that not every feeling needs to be shared immediately. They understand that emotional intensity needs to be balanced with stability. They can comfort themselves. They can wait until appropriate times to process difficult emotions. They understand that you're a partner, not a 24/7 crisis hotline. Strategic vulnerability knows no boundaries. His emotions are always urgent, always need immediate attention, always take precedence. Your work, meeting, your daughter's recital, your self-care time, none of it matters when he's in emotional distress, which seems to be constantly. So what do you do if you recognize this pattern? First, notice your emotional energy balance. Are you giving far more emotional support than you're receiving? Do you feel drained rather than nourished by your interactions? Are you constantly in caretaking mode? If yes, that's not a relationship, that's emotional labor without compensation or reciprocity. Second, observe whether his healing journey actually includes healing. Is he in consistent therapy? Is his behavior improving over time? Can he increasingly regulate his own emotions? Or is he just talking about healing while expecting you to do all the actual work of making him feel better? Third, set a boundary and watch what happens. Say something like, "I care about you, but I need our relationship to have more balance. I can't be your primary source of emotional support." A healthy person will hear this, might feel disappointed, but will respect it and work on building a more balanced dynamic. An unhealthy person will respond with guilt, manipulation, or emotional crisis that makes you take back the boundary. Fourth, stop accepting trauma as an excuse for bad behavior. You can have compassion for someone's past while still holding them accountable in the present. Past pain explains current struggles, but doesn't excuse causing harm to others. If someone's trauma responses include hurting you and they're not actively and successfully working to change those patterns, you don't owe them unlimited patience. Fifth, recognize that you cannot heal anyone. This is perhaps the hardest truth for nurturing, empathetic women to accept. Your love, your wisdom, your patience, your understanding, none of it can heal someone who isn't committed to healing themselves. The right partner is someone who has already done or is actively doing their own healing work with professional support. They might still have areas of growth, but they're not expecting you to be their healer. Remember, vulnerability should create connection, not obligation. Emotional openness should enrich your relationship, not deplete your energy. A man's past should inform your understanding of him, not excuse his present behavior. Your empathy is a gift, not a tool for manipulation. Don't let anyone weaponize your compassion. Toxic behavior, #3. Isolation disguised as US against the world. There's something deeply romantic about the idea of finding someone who makes you feel like it's just the two of you against the world. After years of complicated relationships with friends, family members, maybe even adult children who don't always understand you, the fantasy of a partner who prioritizes you above everyone else can feel like finally coming home. When he says, "I love that it's just us," or "we don't need anyone else," it sounds like commitment, like devotion, like the kind of ride or die partnership you've been craving. But isolation disguised as intimacy is one of the most dangerous forms of manipulation, because by the time you recognize what's happening, you've already been separated from your support system. And for mature women, this isolation often happens more subtly and insidiously than it does with younger women, because toxic men know they have to be smarter about it. You won't accept obvious controlling behavior, so they make isolation feel like your choice, like evolution, like maturity. Let me explain how this works. When you're over 40, you've accumulated a life, friends you've known for decades, family relationships with their own complex histories, community ties, interests, activities. A healthy partner respects this life you've built and wants to become part of it, not replace it. But a controlling man sees your existing relationships as competition, as potential sources of outside perspective that might help you see through his manipulation. So he doesn't attack your relationships directly, at least not at first. Instead, he uses a combination of tactics that gradually, almost imperceptibly, pull you away from everyone else and make you emotionally dependent on him alone. The first tactic is creating special intimacy that supposedly no one else can understand. He positions your relationship as so unique, so deep, so beyond what normal people experience that no one else could possibly comprehend it. Your friends wouldn't understand what we have. People who haven't experienced this kind of connection can't relate. I know your sister means well, but she's never been in a relationship like ours. This sounds like he's celebrating your special bond, but what he's actually doing is preemptively dismissing any outside perspective. When your best friend expresses concern about how much time you're spending with him, you remember his words, "She just doesn't understand." When your adult daughter suggests you're moving too fast, you'd think, "She's never experienced this kind of mature love." He's programmed you to discount anyone's input except his own. The second tactic is subtle criticism of the people in your life, masked as concern or observation. He doesn't say, "I don't like your friends." He says, "I noticed your friends seem pretty negative. Do they always complain that much?" He doesn't say, "Stop talking to your ex-husband." He says, "It seems like he still tries to control you. Have you noticed that?" He doesn't say, "Your children are disrespectful." He says, "I would never let someone talk to you the way your son did at dinner. You deserve better." These observations seem caring, like he's looking out for you, but they're actually planting seeds of doubt about the people who care about you. Over time, you start seeing your relationships through his critical lens. Your friends do seem negative, don't they? Your ex does try to control you. Your kids don't appreciate you enough. These thoughts feel like your own realizations, but they're actually his perspective that he's skillfully implanted in your mind. The third tactic is making plans that conflict with your existing commitments. then making you feel guilty if you don't prioritize him. He suggests a romantic weekend away, but it's the same weekend as your sister's birthday party. He wants to have dinner with you on Wednesday, but that's your standing book club night. He calls when you're out with friends and makes you feel like you're choosing them over him. At first, you might hold your ground, but over time, the emotional cost of maintaining your boundaries becomes exhausting. It's easier to skip book club than to deal with his hurt feelings. It's simpler to miss your sister's party than to navigate his disappointment. Each compromise feels small in isolation, but cumulatively, you're being trained to prioritize him over everyone else. The fourth tactic is love bombing you during time together while punishing you for time apart when you're with him. He's attentive, romantic, making you feel like the center of his universe. But when you're with other people, he becomes distant, cold, or creates some crisis that demands your attention. You start to unconsciously associate time with him as positive and time away from him as negative. Your brain begins to crave the dopamine hit of his undivided attention and avoid the anxiety of his withdrawal. The fifth tactic is gradually positioning himself as the only person who truly understands or supports you. When you share a frustration about work, he's sympathetic, while your friends offer solutions you don't want to hear. When you express hurt about a family member's behavior, he validates your feelings, while your sister tells you you're being too sensitive. When you're excited about an accomplishment, he celebrates you while your colleagues seem jealous or dismissive. He becomes your emotional safe haven, the one person who is always on your side, always understanding, always validating. This sounds ideal, but it's actually dangerous. Healthy relationships include people who sometimes challenge you, who offer different perspectives, who love you enough to tell you when you're wrong. Echo chambers of constant validation feel good, but they stunt growth and leave you vulnerable to manipulation. The sixth tactic is creating shared enemies or common villains in your life story. He positions both of you as having been wronged by others. His ex was crazy, your ex was neglectful, his adult children are ungrateful, your friends are jealous, his colleagues are incompetent, your family doesn't appreciate you. This us against them mentality feels bonding, like you found someone who finally sees the world the way you do. But what he's actually doing is isolating you ideologically. If everyone else is wrong, misguided, or against you, then who do you have? Just him. If your whole social circle is painted as problematic, where can you turn for perspective? Just him. He's become your only ally, which means he's also become your only source of reality. The seventh tactic is monitoring your other relationships and making you account for your time. This doesn't usually look like overt surveillance with mature women, because you wouldn't tolerate that. Instead, it looks like casual interest. How was lunch with your friend? What did you talk about? Did you tell your daughter about what happened with us? Your son called you today. What did he want? These questions seem innocuous, even caring, but they serve two purposes. They make you self-conscious about your interactions with others because you know you'll have to report back, and they give him information about what others might be saying about him or your relationship. Over time, you start self-editing your conversations with others, not bringing up relationship problems, not seeking advice, because you know he'll want to know what was said and you'll have to explain or defend. Let me give you a real-world example. Meet Linda, a 5-6-year-old attorney who had been independent her whole life. She had a tight friend group, was close with her two sisters, had season tickets to the theater with her book club, and volunteered with a local non-profit. When she met Richard, he seemed to admire her full life. He'd say things like, "I love that you're so connected and involved. It's sexy." But within 6 months, Linda's life looked completely different. She'd stopped going to book club because Richard said Wednesday nights were the only evenings he had free for dinner due to his work schedule. She saw her sisters less because Richard liked to spend weekends away, just the two of them. Her friend group felt distant because she'd cancelled plans so many times they stopped inviting her. Richard never explicitly told her to choose him over others. He just made not choosing him emotionally costly. When she did see friends, he'd text throughout, asking when she'd be home. When she attended her sister's family events, he'd be sullen for days afterward, saying he felt like he wasn't a priority. When she volunteered, he'd comment on how exhausting it must be, how she needed to take better care of herself, how he worried about her doing too much. Linda started to feel like her independent life was actually a burden. Richard made things so simple it was just the two of them, uncomplicated, easy. Her friends seemed dramatic and demanding in comparison. Her family seemed intrusive. Even her volunteer work started to feel like an obligation rather than a joy. By the time Linda realized something was wrong, she felt like she had no one to talk to. She distanced from her friends. Her sisters were frustrated with her. Her support system had eroded, and Richard was the center of her universe. When she finally did recognize the isolation, extracting herself was exponentially harder because she'd have to admit to everyone she'd pushed away that they were right to be concerned. That's the trap of isolation disguised as intimacy. By the time you see it, you're already in it. So, how do you recognize this pattern before it's too late? Pay attention to your social life trajectory. Are you seeing friends and family less than you did before this relationship? Have activities you used to enjoy fallen away? Do you make excuses for why you're less available? If your social circle is shrinking rather than expanding to include this new person, that's a red flag. Notice whose opinion matters to you. In a healthy relationship, you still value the perspectives of people who knew you before him. You can receive feedback from trusted friends and seriously consider it. In an isolating relationship, his opinion becomes the only one that matters. Everyone else's concerns are automatically dismissed. Observe whether integration or separation is happening. A healthy partner wants to meet your friends and family, wants to be part of your existing life, invites you into his social circle. An isolating partner keeps you separate from his world while pulling you away from yours. There's always a reason why you can't meet his friends, why family gatherings are awkward, why mixing your worlds won't work. Check your autonomy level. Can you make plans without consulting him? Can you see people without his approval, explicit or implicit? Can you have friends or activities that are yours alone? Or does everything need his input, his blessing, his involvement? Isolation often comes with decreasing autonomy masked as partnership. Notice the aftermath of time spent apart. Does he celebrate your outside relationships and encourage you to maintain them? Or does seeing others somehow always result in conflict, his bad mood, or relationship problems that need intense processing? If spending time with people you love consistently creates relationship turmoil, he's training you through negative reinforcement to stop doing it. Watch for triangulation. Is he comparing you to others in your life, usually with you coming out ahead? Your friends seem immature compared to you. I can't believe your sister said that to you. You're so much more evolved than she is. These comparisons feel validating, but they're actually creating distance between you and the people being criticized. What should you do if you recognize this pattern? First, deliberately maintain your existing relationships, even when it's uncomfortable. Schedule regular time with friends and family, and keep those commitments. Don't allow his scheduling conflicts, bad moods, or emergencies to always take precedence. Your other relationships are not optional extras in your life. They're essential parts of your identity and support system. Second, talk to trusted people about your relationship, including things that concern you. An isolating partner will discourage this. Why do we need to involve other people in our relationship? What we have is between us. Your friends are just going to judge me. Don't accept these excuses. Healthy relationships can withstand outside perspective. Unhealthy ones can't. Third, Notice whether your decision-making has become dependent on him. Are you checking with him before making plans, accepting invitations, or making choices? While consideration is healthy, if you've stopped trusting your own judgment without his input, that's concerning. Rebuild your autonomy by making some decisions independently and observing his reaction. Fourth, be honest about whether you're happier or more anxious. Isolation often masquerades as peace. It's so much simpler now that it's just us. But simple isn't the same as healthy. If your life has become narrower, your relationships thinner, your world smaller, that's not intimacy, that's isolation. Fifth, create and maintain boundaries around your autonomy. You don't need his permission to see friends. You don't need to justify spending time with family. You don't need to account for every hour. If he responds to reasonable autonomy with anger, accusations, or emotional manipulation, that's a major red flag that you're dealing with a controlling person, not a loving partner. Remember, love expands your world, control shrinks it. The right person celebrates your friendships, respects your family bonds, encourages your independent interests. The wrong person gradually becomes your entire world while making you believe it was your choice. Don't confuse possessiveness for devotion or isolation for intimacy. If you're feeling this message, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, and take a moment to comment below. Have you experienced isolation disguised as love? Your story might help another woman recognize this pattern before it's too late. Toxic behavior. #4. Future faking disguised as serious commitment. One of the most painful experiences for a mature woman is investing your heart, your time, and your emotions into a relationship that you believe is building toward a real future, only to discover that the future you were promised never existed outside of his words. This manipulation tactic is called future faking, and it's particularly devastating when you're over 40 because you don't have endless time to waste on relationships going nowhere. Future faking is when someone paints an elaborate picture of a future together, moving in together, getting married, traveling the world, blending families, growing old together, but none of these plans are genuine. They're just tactics to keep you invested, to prevent you from leaving, to extract resources, emotional, financial, or otherwise, from you while offering nothing but empty promises in return. For younger women, future faking might be obvious. He talks about marriage on the second date, which seems absurd. But for mature women, future faking is more sophisticated. It's wrapped in age-appropriate timelines. It includes practical details that make it seem real, and it's delivered by men who know exactly how to make their lies believable to women who have learned to be discerning. Here's why future faking works so effectively on women over 40. First, you've reached a stage of life where you value your time differently. You're not interested in casual dating or situationships. You want something real that's actually going somewhere. When a man talks seriously about a future together, it aligns with what you're looking for, so you're inclined to take him at his word, especially if he seems mature and established. Second, you may be dealing with biological or social realities that create urgency. Maybe you want to find a partner before your health declines. Maybe you're watching friends couple up and feeling like time is running out. Maybe you've recently lost a spouse and are scared of growing old alone. These vulnerabilities make you more susceptible to promises of a committed future. Third, you've likely been criticized in past relationships for being too demanding, too serious, or moving too fast. So when a man matches your pace and talks openly about a serious future, it feels validating. Finally, someone who wants what you want. Finally, someone who isn't scared off by your clarity about what you're looking for. Fourth, future faking from a mature man includes details that seem credible. He doesn't just say, "I want to marry you." He talks about specific timelines. He mentions how he'd introduce you to his adult children. He discusses selling his house and buying one together. He shows you retirement destinations and asks your opinion. These details create the illusion of real planning rather than vague fantasies. So what does future faking actually look like in practice? It starts early with statements about your compatibility for a long-term future. I can really see us growing old together. You're exactly what I've been looking for. I haven't felt this way about anyone in years, maybe ever. These statements, coming early in the DARM relationship, create an immediate sense of trajectory. This isn't just dating, this is heading somewhere serious. Then come the specific future references. He talks about holidays you'll spend together. I can't wait to show you Italy next spring. He mentions events months away. My daughter's wedding in December, you'll be my date, obviously. He discusses lifestyle changes you'll make together. When we move in together, we should get a dog. Every conversation reinforces the reality of a shared future. He asks your input on future decisions, which makes the plans feel collaborative. Would you rather live in the city or the suburbs when we get a place together? Should we do a small wedding or something bigger? What do you think about spending winters somewhere warm once we retire? These questions make you an active participant in planning a future that doesn't exist. He introduces elements of his life that seem to confirm these plans. Maybe he mentions talking to his financial advisor about his estate planning and says, I told him I'm in a serious relationship now that might lead to marriage. Maybe he shows you a property listing and says, this would be perfect for. Maybe he mentions to his adult children that he's seeing someone special and it's getting serious. But here's the crucial pattern. None of these plans ever materialize. There's always a reason why now isn't quite the right time. The holiday trip gets postponed because of work. The conversation about moving in together gets delayed because of his lease. The meeting with his children keeps getting rescheduled because of their schedules. The engagement he hinted at is waiting until his divorce is finalized, his debt is paid off, his house sells, his adult daughter gets through her difficult phase. There's always something. And when you bring this up, when you point out that all this future planning isn't translating into present action, he makes you feel unreasonable. I told you, I see a future with us. Why do you need constant reassurance? We're building something real. Why are you trying to rush it? I'm here, aren't I? Why isn't that enough for you? This gaslighting is particularly effective because mature women have been socialized to be patient, to not be needy, to give men space to move at their own pace. You start questioning yourself. Maybe you are being too demanding. Maybe you should just enjoy the present without obsessing about the future. Maybe your insecurity is the problem, not his empty promises. But deep down, you feel something is off. The future he talks about so confidently never gets closer. You're in a perpetual state of soon. Soon we'll move in together. Soon he'll introduce you to his family. Soon things will shift. But soon never comes. You're stuck in an endless present while he keeps you pacified with promises about a future he has no intention of delivering. Let me give you a concrete example. Meet Patricia, a 61-year-old, retired teacher who met Gregory at a community event. Gregory was 65, recently widowed, and seemed ready for a serious relationship. From their very first date, he talked about finding a life partner, about not wanting to spend his remaining years alone, about the importance of companionship in later life. Within weeks, Gregory was making future plans. He talked about introducing Patricia to his adult children at Christmas. He mentioned selling his large family home and finding something more manageable that he could share with a partner. He discussed traveling. He'd always wanted to do a European river cruise, and now finally he'd have someone to go with. Patricia was cautious at first, but Gregory's consistency was reassuring. Every time they talked, he reinforced these plans. He showed her cruise itineraries. He casually mentioned her when talking to his children. He drove her past houses for sale and asked if she liked them. Patricia began to orient her own life around this future. She decided not to downsize to a smaller apartment because they'd be getting a place together soon. She turned down a volunteer opportunity that would have required regular travel because Gregory had said they'd be spending more time together. But Christmas came and went without meeting his children. They'd had other plans, and Gregory didn't want to force it. 6 months passed and he hadn't listed his house. The market wasn't quite right yet. A year went by and the European cruise never happened. His retirement funds needed to recover from some bad investments. 18 months in, Patricia realized she was in exactly the same position as day one, except now she was a year and a half older, had reorganized her life around plans that existed only in conversation, and had invested deeply in a relationship that hadn't actually progressed at all. When Patricia confronted Gregory about the disconnect between his words and actions, he was wounded. He was trying to build something real with her. Why was she pressuring him? He'd told her he saw a future together. Wasn't that enough? Did she think he was lying? Her doubt was hurtful. Maybe she wasn't as committed as he thought. Patricia backed off, apologized, and stayed for another year of the same pattern before she finally recognized that she was being future-faked. Gregory had no intention of introducing her to his children, sharing a home, or going on that cruise. He was content with the status quo: someone to have dinner with, someone to travel locally with, someone to fill the loneliness of widowhood without any of the actual commitment of building a life together. That's 3 years of Patricia's life. 3 years she'll never get back, invested in a future that was never real. So how do you identify future faking before you've wasted years? First, observe the ratio of talk to action. Anyone can talk about the future. What matters is whether words translate into concrete present actions. If he talks about moving in together but never discusses his lease end date, never looks at properties, never makes space for your belongings, that's talk without action. If he mentions getting engaged but never discusses finances, never looks at rings, never brings up the practical realities, that's future faking. Second, notice whether timelines move forward or stay perpetually vague. Real plans have real timelines that get closer. We'll move in together in the spring should become we'll move in together in March, and then we'll move in together on March 15th, and then actual steps toward making that happen. If it stays stuck at sometime next year, and next year never comes, you're being future faked. Third, watch whether obstacles are addressed or become excuses. Real obstacles to real plans get solved. I need to wait until my lease is up. Has a solution, checking when the lease ends and making a plan around that date. I need to talk to my kids first. Has a solution, scheduling that. Conversation. I need to get my finances in order. Has a solution, meeting with a financial advisor and creating a timeline. If obstacles are stated but never addressed, they're not obstacles, they're excuses. Fourth, observe whether you're integrated into his actual life or kept separate. If you're his future but not his present, that's a major red flag. Meeting friends and family, being included in regular activities, having your schedule considered when he makes plans, these are present-day integrations that should come before future promises. If he talks about forever but you're still not invited to his daughter's birthday dinner, he's lying. Fifth, notice whether his future talk increases when you're pulling away or expressing doubt. Future faking often intensifies when the person senses they're losing you. Suddenly there are concrete plans, specific dates, renewed commitment, just enough to pull you back in. But once you're secure again, the plans evaporate back into vague, someday promises. Sixth, pay attention to whether other areas of his life show follow-through. Does he keep commitments? Does he do what he says he'll do? Or is his entire life characterized by grand plans and poor execution? Someone who can't follow through on small things won't follow through on big things. Future faking is often just one manifestation of a larger pattern of unreliability. So, what should you do if you suspect future faking? First, start tracking patterns. Write down what he says will happen and when. Then track what actually happens. This simple exercise can be eye-opening. Seeing in black and white that he's been saying you'll meet his children soon for 8 months helps you cut through the confusion. Second, have direct conversations with specific questions. Don't accept vague reassurance. Ask, "You've mentioned several times that you want us to move in together. Let's talk specifically about when and how that would happen. What needs to occur first?" What's a realistic timeline? A person with genuine plans can answer these questions. A future faker will deflect, get defensive, or turn the conversation back to why you're being demanding. Third, set internal timelines and stick to them. You don't need to announce these to him, but decide for yourself. If we haven't made concrete progress on moving in together by X date, or if I haven't met his children by Y date, or if we haven't had a real discussion about marriage by Z date, I'm leaving. Then follow through. Your time is valuable and finite. Fourth, don't reorganize your life around promises. Keep making your own plans, pursuing your own opportunities, living your own life. Don't turn down the job opportunity because he's mentioned moving to his city. Don't avoid dating other people during the early stages because he's talked about exclusivity. Don't make life decisions based on futures that exist only in conversation. Fifth, trust your gut. If something feels off, if you feel like you're in limbo, if you're starting to feel anxious or resentful about the lack of progress, listen to those feelings. Your intuition is picking up on the dissonance between his words and his actions, even if you can't quite articulate it yet. Remember, the future isn't something to talk about, it's something to build. Real commitment shows up in present-day choices. Real plans include unglamorous logistics. Real partnership involves uncomfortable conversations about practical realities. If all you have is beautiful words about a tomorrow that never comes, you don't have love, you have manipulation. Toxic behavior #5. Financial exploitation disguised as building something together. This is perhaps the most pragmatic form of manipulation, and one that can have devastating material consequences for women who have spent decades building financial security. Financial exploitation in mature relationships is rarely obvious. It's not usually about someone directly asking for money or stealing from ease. Instead, it's about gradually repositioning financial resources so that you're carrying more burden while he's extracting more benefit, all while framing this arrangement as partnership or investment in your shared future. Financial exploitation targeting mature women is particularly insidious because it exploits your financial literacy and capability. You're not broke or naive. You likely have assets, maybe a paid-off house, retirement savings, equity, income from work or investments. You understand money. That's exactly why toxic men approach your finances strategically rather than obviously. Let me explain the various forms this takes. The first form is the slow-motion financial merger, where expenses become shared but assets remain separate. It starts innocently enough. You're spending a lot of time together, so it makes sense to split dinners, share grocery costs, alternate paying for activities. This feels equal and mature. Then it progresses. He's at your place so often that he suggests contributing to utilities, which seems fair. Maybe he starts storing some groceries at your place and you shop together. But gradually, you notice an imbalance. You're covering more than your share of joint expenses. When you bring this up, he has explanations that seem reasonable in isolation. "I'm between jobs right now," or "My child support payments are killing me," or "I'm cash poor because all my money is tied up in investments." He frames his financial dependence as temporary, as something any supportive partner would help with, as an investment in your future together, because once his situation improves, he'll more than make it up to you. Meanwhile, he's never quite ready to formalize the relationship in ways that would provide you legal protection for your financial contributions. Moving in together always gets delayed. He's not ready to add you to the deed despite living in your house. The joint account he suggested never materializes. Marriage is something he wants eventually, but the timing never seems right. Years can pass like this, with you covering an increasing share of living expenses while he maintains his financial independence and contributes minimally. If you're married and then divorce, your financial contributions to shared expenses would be relevant. But without marriage or legal cohabitation agreements, you're essentially subsidizing his lifestyle with no legal recourse. The second form is the investment opportunity scheme. He presents himself as financially savvy, someone with business acumen and investment knowledge. He talks about opportunities, a real estate flip, a business venture, cryptocurrency investments, a startup. These opportunities require capital and would generate significant returns. He's investing his own money, of course, but there's room for a partner if you're interested. This isn't him asking you for money. This is him generously offering to include you in something lucrative. The manipulation here is multi-layered. First, he's positioning himself as the financial expert and you as the beneficiary of his knowledge. Second, he's framing your investment as proof of your belief in him and your shared future. If you really trust me and see a future with us, you'd want to be part of this. Third, he's creating a scenario where if things go wrong, it's not his fault: market forces, bad timing, an untrustworthy partner, but if they go right, he's positioned to control the assets. Mature women fall for this because we understand that wealth building requires risk and investment. We're not afraid of financial complexity. But what we don't always recognize is when investment opportunity is code for "give me money I'll never return." The third form is lifestyle inflation that you fund. He gradually accustoms you both to a lifestyle that requires your income to maintain. Maybe you earn more than him, or maybe your retirement savings give you more disposable income. Dinners get fancier. You start taking trips you pay for. He gets used to staying at your place, which is nicer than his apartment. Your car becomes the car you both use because it's newer. None of this is explicitly him taking from you, but you're maintaining a lifestyle level that benefits both of you while you're covering more of the costs. And now, reducing that lifestyle feels like punishment for both of you. You're trapped in funding a life together that should be shared responsibility. The fourth form is the crisis milking pattern. He has financial emergencies that you help with. His car breaks down and he needs to get to work. His adult child has a crisis and needs money. His health insurance didn't cover something. His business had an unexpected expense. Each crisis is legitimate sounding. Each time, he's genuinely grateful for your help and promises to pay you back. Each instance alone seems like what you'd do for someone you love. But crisis after crisis, you realize you're functioning as his financial safety net. He never quite seems to get ahead. There's always something. The payback never happens because a new crisis emerges. You're not in a partnership, you're in a one-way financial support system where you carry the burden of both of your lives. The fifth form is the future promise attached to present extraction. Once we're married, everything will be ours anyway. So what difference does it make? This logic is used to encourage you to spend your money on joint expenses, improvements to his property, or investments in his business, with the promise that marriage will eventually formalize the partnership. But marriage never quite happens. There's always a reason to wait. And in the meantime, your retirement savings are depleted, your home equity is tapped, your financial security is compromised, all for a future that exists only in his promises. The sixth form is intellectual property or credential exploitation. This one is specific to women who have professional expertise, business connections, or credentials. He needs your professional advice, your network, your business insight, your good credit, your professional reputation. Can you make an introduction? Can he list you as a reference? Can you co-sign this lease? Can he use your professional credentials to get better rates or access? Each ask seems small. You're helping your partner succeed, but cumulatively, you're providing valuable professional capital with no compensation, while potentially exposing yourself to liability. If he defaults on something you've co-signed, if he abuses a professional connection you made, if he damages your reputation by association, the consequences fall on you. Let me share a devastating real-world example. Meet Dorothy, a 8-year-old executive with a healthy retirement portfolio and a paid-off house from her divorce settlement. She met Edward, a 2-year-old self-employed consultant with a compelling story about being financially recovering from an expensive divorce. Edward was charming about money, never cheap, always generous with gestures like flowers or cooking dinner at her place. He talked about building a future together where they'd be financial partners. Within months, Edward was spending most nights at Dorothy's house. It made sense for him to contribute to groceries and utilities. Then, his consulting business hit a slow patch, and his contributions became sporadic. When Dorothy raised this, Edward was hurt. She earned 3 times what he did. Was she really going to keep score? They were building a life together. Once his business picked up, or once they got married and fully combined finances, it would all even out. Dorothy felt guilty for being petty about money when they were supposedly in love. Edward mentioned a real estate investment opportunity, a property that would flip quickly for significant profit. He was putting in $30,000 of his own money. If Dorothy wanted to invest $50,000, they could be equal partners. Dorothy hesitated, but Edward pointed out that she had money sitting in savings, doing nothing. This was a smart investment and a way to build their shared wealth. Dorothy invested. The flip didn't happen. The property needed more work than anticipated. More money was required. Edward was apologetic, but also suggested that if Dorothy could invest another $20,000, they could finish the project. Dorothy was already in for $50,000. She invested more. 2 years later, Dorothy had invested $80,000 total in a property that Edward now claimed was in his name because he'd found the deal and managed the project. Her name was nowhere on the deed. They still weren't married despite Edward's constant talk about it. The property finally sold, but according to Edward, after paying off loans and contractors, there was barely any profit. Certainly not enough to pay Dorothy back. Dorothy had also spent 2 years covering most of their shared living expenses because Edward's business was still recovering. She'd paid for 2 vacations because Edward's cash flow was tight. She'd lent him $5,000 for a temporary crisis with his adult son that was never repaid. When Dorothy finally added it up, she'd spent or invested over $100,000 on this relationship. Edward had contributed perhaps $10,000 total, and when Dorothy, finally recognizing the imbalance, suggested they either formalize their relationship legally or reconsider their financial arrangement, Edward was devastated. He couldn't believe Dorothy was putting money before their love. If she really cared about him, she wouldn't be keeping score. Her materialism was destroying what they had. Dorothy, now 60, had seen her retirement security significantly diminished, had received nothing in return except emotional manipulation, and faced starting over financially at an age where recovering those losses would be difficult. That's what financial exploitation looks like when it's allowed to run its course. So, how do you protect yourself? First, maintain absolute financial independence until and unless there is legal formalization of the relationship. This means separate accounts, separate credit, separate property ownership. What's mine is ours, but what's yours is yours, is not a partnership, it's exploitation. Second, Never invest in anything where you don't have equal legal protection. If your name isn't on the deed, the business, the account, you're not investing, you're giving money away. No matter how much you trust him, no matter how much he talks about your shared future, if the legal structure doesn't protect your investment, don't make it. Third, maintain awareness of financial contributions. This doesn't mean being petty or ungenerous. It means knowing whether the relationship is financially balanced or whether you're subsidizing his life. If you're consistently covering more than 50% of shared expenses without a clear reason tied to income disparity that you've explicitly agreed to, that's a problem. Fourth, never let love bypass logic. The statement, "If you loved me, you'd help me," or "If you trusted our relationship, you wouldn't hesitate," is manipulation. Real love includes financial boundaries. Real trust includes transparency and legal protection. Someone who genuinely cares about you doesn't want you to take financial risks that could hurt you. Fifth, absolutely refuse to co-sign, provide credit references, or attach your professional reputation without legal partnership. The risk is yours, the benefit is his. That's not how partnerships work. Sixth, if someone claims to be financially savvy but is always short on cash, believe the behavior, not the story. Someone with real financial acumen has savings, emergency funds, and doesn't lurch from crisis to crisis. Someone who talks a good game about money but never seems to have any is not financially sophisticated. They're financially irresponsible or deliberately exploitative. Seventh, set clear boundaries early. I'm happy to share expenses proportionally based on our incomes, but I need us to track this. I don't lend money to romantic partners because it changes the dynamic. I won't invest in opportunities where I don't have legal protection of my partner. Investment. These boundaries might feel unromantic, but they're essential. Eighth, pay attention to his reaction to your financial boundaries. A healthy person respects your financial prudence. An exploitative person gets defensive, accusatory, or wounded. "You don't trust me. You care more about money than us. I thought you were different." These responses tell you everything you need to know. Remember, financial exploitation isn't about needing to split every check evenly or never being generous. It's about someone systematically extracting financial resources from you while providing minimal contribution in return and preventing you from having legal protections for your investments or contributions. Your hard-earned financial security should never be sacrificed for someone who talks about partnership but practices exploitation. Toxic behavior, #6. Reality distortion disguised as your perception problem. This final toxic behavior is perhaps the most psychologically damaging because it attacks something mature women pride themselves on: your judgment, your memory, your perception of reality. After decades of life experience that have honed your ability to read situations and people, the idea that your perception might be fundamentally flawed is destabilizing. But that's exactly what some toxic men count on, undermining your confidence in your own mind until you're dependent on them to tell you what's real. This manipulation tactic is called gaslighting, and while the term has become somewhat overused, genuine gaslighting is a serious form of psychological abuse that can leave you questioning your sanity. For mature women, gaslighting is especially damaging because it targets the wisdom and discernment you've developed over a lifetime. Let me explain how this works and why it's so effective against women over 40. Gaslighting is a pattern where someone systematically denies your reality, memories, and perceptions to make you doubt yourself. It's not just disagreeing with you or remembering things differently. It's a deliberate pattern of making you question your own mind to gain power and avoid accountability. Here's why mature women are vulnerable to this, despite their life experience. You've likely been told throughout your life that you're too emotional, too sensitive, or overreacting. You've been socialized to doubt your instincts when they conflict with male authority. You've probably been in relationships where your concerns were dismissed enough times that part of you wonders if maybe you do perceive things incorrectly. You've learned to second-guess yourself, to be reasonable, to give people the benefit of the doubt. A gaslighter exploits this conditioning. He weaponizes your desire to be fair and reasonable against you. Every time you raise a concern, question a behavior, or point out an inconsistency, he reframes it as your perception problem. He's not doing anything wrong, you're seeing things wrong. He's not lying, you're remembering incorrectly. He's not being cruel, you're being oversensitive. Let me describe the specific tactics. The first tactic is straight denial of things that provably happened. You confront him about something he said or did, and he categorically denies it. Not, "I don't remember it that way," but "that never happened. I never said that. You're making that up." This isn't him having a different memory, it's him telling you your memory is fabricated. The example might be, he promised to attend your daughter's birthday dinner, but he didn't show up and didn't call. When you express hurt and disappointment, he says, "I never said I would come. You assumed I would, but I never promised that." You clearly, remember him saying he'd be there, but his confident denial makes you question yourself. Did he actually say he'd come? Are you misremembering? You start to feel unsure of something you were certain about an hour ago. The second tactic is reframing your reasonable reactions as emotional instability. You have a valid concern or hurt feeling. Instead of addressing it, he makes the conversation about your mental state. You're completely overreacting. This isn't normal behavior. "I'm worried about you, you're not thinking clearly." Maybe you need to talk to someone about why you're so emotional lately. Notice what he's done. Your legitimate grievance about his behavior has become an analysis of your psychological state. You're no longer discussing what he did, you're defending your mental health. And because you're a mature woman who has done therapy, who values self-awareness, who wants to take responsibility for your emotions, you actually start questioning whether maybe he's right. Maybe you are being too emotional. Maybe your perception is skewed. The third tactic is strategic forgetting and selective memory. He claims not to remember conversations that are inconvenient for him to remember. "I don't recall saying that. If I said that, I must have been joking and you misunderstood. You might be confusing me with someone else." This is different from genuine memory differences. It's suspiciously consistent. He always forgets things that would make him look bad or hold him accountable, but has perfect recall of everything else. The fourth tactic is progressive isolation of your reality. At first, he questions your memory of interactions with him. Then he starts questioning your perception of other people and situations. "Are you sure that's what your friend meant? I don't think your son said it that way." You're reading negativity into neutral situations. Gradually, he becomes the arbiter of reality, and you stop trusting your own interpretations of anything. The fifth tactic is using your past against you. If you've been in therapy, had depression or anxiety, gone through a difficult divorce, or experienced trauma, he'll weaponize this. Given your history of anxiety, maybe you're not seeing this clearly. Your therapist told you that you have trust issues, and I think that's coloring your perception. After your divorce, you're hypervigilant about certain things, which is understandable but not accurate. He's taken vulnerable information you shared and turned it into a tool to dismiss your valid concerns. Every time you raise an issue, he attributes it to your psychological history rather than his actual behavior. The sixth tactic is recruiting others to validate his version of reality. He might say things to mutual friends or your family that make you look unreasonable. "I'm worried about her. She's been so on edge lately. She's accusing me of things I never said." He's creating a coalition that reinforces his narrative that the problem is your perception, not his behavior. The seventh tactic is the occasional admission designed to make him seem credible. Every so often, he admits to something minor, which makes his constant denials seem more legitimate. "You're right, I did forget to call you back. My bad." This small concession makes you think. See, when he actually does something wrong, he admits it. So all those other times he denies things, maybe I really am misremembering. But notice the pattern. He admits to minor things that don't matter while denying major things that would require real accountability. Let me give you a comprehensive example of how gaslighting unfolds over time. Meet Janet, a 64-year-old retired nurse who met Tom, a 67-year-old widower, at a church social. Tom was attentive and respectful. Janet felt she'd found a good man. But within months, Janet started noticing concerning patterns. Tom would make plans with Janet, then claim he'd never agreed to those plans. She'd remember him specifically saying he'd help her with yard work on Saturday, but when Saturday came, he'd say, "I never said I'd help. You asked and I said maybe, but you heard what you wanted to hear." When Janet showed him a text where he'd said, "See you Saturday," he'd say, "That doesn't mean I agreed to help with yard work. You're reading things into my texts that aren't there." Janet started screenshotting conversations because her memory was being questioned so often. Tom would say hurtful things, then deny saying them. At a family gathering, he made a critical comment about Janet's weight in front of her daughter. When Janet confronted him later, he was genuinely confused. "I never said that. Your daughter must have misheard me." Janet wondered. Did he really say it? Was she too sensitive to what she perceived as a criticism? Tom began questioning Janet's memory more broadly. "Your memory is getting fuzzy. It happens with age." He'd remind her of this often, making her self-conscious about her cognitive function. Janet, aware that cognitive decline is a real concern at her age, started doubting herself more deeply. Tom would share details of his day, then later claim events happened completely differently. Janet would point out the inconsistency, and Tom would get concerned. "I'm worried about you. You're confusing things I told you with things you imagined." Janet started keeping a journal, trying to track what was real and what she might be misremembering. When Janet's friends expressed concerns about Tom's treatment of her, Tom framed their concern as jealousy or meddling. "They're just not used to you being happy. They want you to stay single like them." He questioned whether Janet's friends were really good influences. "They seem to fill your head with doubts about me." Janet started seeing her friends less, partly because she was embarrassed to tell them Tom was right. Maybe she was being too sensitive, too paranoid. Janet's daughter also expressed concerns, noting that Janet seemed anxious and unlike herself. Tom suggested that perhaps Janet's daughter was having trouble with Janet dating because she hadn't fully processed Janet's husband's death. He reframed the daughter's valid concerns as her own psychological issues. 2 years into the relationship, Janet felt like she was losing her mind. She couldn't trust her own memories. She second-guessed every perception. She felt constantly anxious, wondering if her concerns were real or imagined. She'd gone from a confident, sharp woman to someone who apologized constantly and prefaced every statement with, "Maybe I'm wrong, but..." That's what gaslighting does. It doesn't just make you doubt specific memories, it makes you doubt your entire capacity to perceive reality accurately. So how do you recognize gaslighting and protect yourself? First, document everything. Keep a journal. Screenshot text conversations. Email yourself summaries of in-person conversations while they're fresh. This isn't about being paranoid, it's about having an objective record when someone is systematically denying reality. When you can look back and see patterns of denial that contradict documented evidence, you can trust your perception. Second, notice if you're constantly apologizing or prefacing statements with, "Maybe I'm wrong," or "Am I being too sensitive?" If you've become unsure of your own mind in this relationship, That's a red flag. Healthy relationships don't leave you doubting your sanity. Third, pay attention to whether conflicts ever get resolved or whether they become interrogations of your perception. In healthy disagreements, two people have different perspectives, discuss them, and reach understanding or compromise. In gaslighting relationships, every concern you raise becomes an analysis of why your perception is flawed. Fourth, check in with trusted people outside the relationship. Describe specific incidents without interpretation. He said he'd attend my event, then claimed he never said that. He made a critical comment, then denied saying it. People who aren't under his influence can often see gaslighting more clearly than you can from inside it. Fifth, trust your body. If interactions with him leave you feeling confused, anxious, and questioning yourself, your body is giving you information. If you feel crazy, but only in relation to him, that's not coincidence. Sixth, watch whether he ever takes accountability. Does he ever genuinely apologize without making it conditional? Does he ever admit wrongdoing without minimizing or justifying it? Can he ever be wrong? People who gaslight fundamentally cannot take accountability because doing so would undermine their entire strategy of making everything your fault. Seventh, notice whether your mental health has declined since being with him. Are you more anxious? Are you sleeping poorly? Have you started doubting yourself more? Are you seeing your therapist more? Has your therapist expressed concern? If your psychological well-being has deteriorated in this relationship, the relationship is the problem, not you. What should you do if you recognize gaslighting? First, name it. Say out loud, "This is gaslighting." Even if you say it only to yourself or a trusted friend, naming the manipulation breaks its power. You're not crazy. You're being deliberately made to feel crazy. Those are two completely different things. Second, stop trying to get him to see your reality. This is a trap many gaslighting victims fall into. You think if you could just explain clearly enough, provide enough evidence, help him understand, he'd acknowledge the truth. But he's not misunderstanding you, he's deliberately distorting reality. No amount of evidence or explanation will change someone who is invested in making you doubt yourself. Third, reduce information sharing. Stop telling him about your therapy, your insecurities, your past struggles. Everything you share becomes ammunition. A gaslighter will weaponize your vulnerabilities, so protect them. Fourth, rebuild trust in yourself. Start noticing when your instincts are correct. Keep your journal and review it to see that your memories are accurate. Reconnect with activities and people who make you feel confident and competent. Gaslighting has made you doubt yourself. You need to actively rebuild that trust. Fifth, prepare for the extinction burst. When you stop allowing gaslighting to work, when you start trusting yourself over his denials, he will likely escalate. He might become more aggressive in his denials, more insistent that you're mentally unwell, more desperate to regain control of the narrative. This escalation is actually a sign that your boundaries are working, he's losing his power. Sixth, consider leaving. Gaslighting is psychological abuse. It doesn't get better. Someone who gaslights you does not love you, they're using you. They need you to doubt yourself, so you'll tolerate unacceptable treatment. Once you recognize this pattern, the healthiest response is usually to end the relationship. Seventh, seek professional support if needed. A therapist who understands psychological abuse can be invaluable in helping you recognize gaslighting patterns, rebuild trust in your perceptions, and heal from the psychological damage. Remember, your reality is your reality. Your memories are your memories. Your perceptions, honed over decades of life experience, are valid. A man who loves you doesn't make you question your sanity. He doesn't deny your experiences. He doesn't weaponize your vulnerabilities. He doesn't twist reality to escape accountability. If you feel crazy in a relationship, you're probably not crazy. you're probably being systematically manipulated. Trust yourself. Your wisdom didn't evaporate because one man says it did. You've earned the right to trust your own mind. If you've made it this far in this video, you're part of a community of women who refuse to sacrifice their peace, their dignity, or their reality for the illusion of love. And that matters more than you know. Let's take a moment to recap what we've covered, because these 6 toxic behaviors are patterns you need to recognize immediately before significant damage is done. We talked about intensive early attention disguised as mature love, remember? Real connection builds gradually, respects boundaries, and doesn't consume your entire existence within days or weeks. We discussed strategic vulnerability disguised as emotional evolution. Authentic openness strengthens both people, while weaponized vulnerability depletes you while sustaining him. We exposed isolation disguised as intimacy. Love expands your world, control shrinks it. The right person celebrates your other relationships, not systematically destroys them. We revealed future faking disguised as serious commitment. The future isn't something to talk about, it's something to build. Real plans translate into present actions, not endless someday promises. We uncovered financial exploitation disguised as partnership. Real collaboration includes equal contribution and legal protection. Someone who truly loves you doesn't systematically extract your resources while providing minimal reciprocity. And finally, we examined reality distortion disguised as your perception problem. Your wisdom, your memory, your judgment are valid. A man who makes you question your sanity is not confused about reality. He's deliberately distorting it. These 6 behaviors have something crucial in common. They all exploit your strengths, your emotional maturity, your life experience, your wisdom, your desire for genuine connection, your financial security, your sharp mind. Toxic men know they can't come at you with obvious manipulation like they might with younger women. So they've evolved their tactics to specifically target what makes you powerful. But here's what they don't count on. Once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. Knowledge is protection. Awareness is armor. You now know what to look for, which means you're exponentially harder to manipulate. So what now? Here's what I want you to do. First, if this video resonated with you, if you recognized any of these behaviors in a current or past relationship, if you feel like this information could have saved you years of heartache if you'd known it earlier, hit that like button. Your engagement helps this content reach other women who need this information. The algorithm suppresses content like this that makes uncomfortable truths visible, so your like is an act of solidarity with other women. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We're building a community of women who are done being manipulated, done settling, done confusing toxic behavior for love. Every week, we're posting content that gives you the tools to protect your heart while staying open to genuine connection. This isn't about becoming cynical or closed off. It's about becoming wise and discerning. Third, comment below. Share your story if you feel safe doing so. Tell us which of these behaviors you've experienced. Tell us what red flags you missed that you see clearly now. Tell us how you got out or how you're working on getting out. Your comment might be exactly what another woman needs to hear to validate her own experience and take action. Fourth, share this video. I know it's long, and I know sharing relationship content can feel personal, but if you have a friend, a sister, a mother, a colleague who's in a relationship that concerns you, send her this video. Don't tell her what to do with it. Don't add your commentary. Just say, I came across this and thought of you. Plant the seed. She'll recognize the patterns if they're present. And fifth, if you find genuine value in this content, if these videos have helped you avoid or escape toxic relationships, if the work we do here has made a material difference in your life, please consider supporting this channel with super thanks. Creating detailed, thoroughly researched content like this takes significant time and resources. The YouTube algorithm doesn't favor long-form educational content about uncomfortable topics. Your financial support allows us to keep producing this essential information without having to compromise or soften the message to appease advertisers. Now, I want to address something directly. Some of you watching this might be in relationships with good men and might be worried that you're going to become paranoid or start seeing red flags where they don't exist. That's a valid concern, but here's the truth. Healthy love is easy to distinguish from manipulation once you know what to look for. A good man won't be threatened by your boundaries, he'll respect them. A good man won't isolate you, he'll want to be part of your whole life. A good man won't promise endlessly without delivering. His actions will match his words. A good man won't exploit you financially, he'll contribute fairly and protect your interests. A good man won't make you doubt your reality, he'll validate your experiences even when you disagree. Knowing how to recognize manipulation doesn't make you paranoid, it makes you safe. It makes you able to fully invest in genuine love because you're not wasting time on counterfeits. And to any of you currently in toxic relationships who recognize multiple patterns from this video, I see you. I know how confusing it is. I know you love him. I know you've invested time, emotion, maybe money into this relationship. I know leaving feels impossible. I know you keep hoping he'll change or that you'll figure out how to make it work. But I also need you to hear this. Time doesn't make toxic relationships better. You can't love someone into treating you well. You can't be understanding enough, patient enough, supportive enough to transform a manipulator into a partner. His behavior is not your responsibility to fix. You deserve a relationship that nourishes you, not one that depletes you. Your age is not a liability. Your past is not baggage. Your wisdom is not paranoia. Your boundaries are not unreasonable. Your financial security is not selfish. Your need for reciprocity is not demanding. Everything about you that you've worried makes you difficult or high maintenance. Those are actually your strengths. The right person will see them as such. You don't owe anyone more chances. You don't owe anyone the benefit of the doubt when the evidence is clear. You don't owe anyone your peace of mind, your financial security, or your mental health just because you've already invested time in the relationship. Sunk cost fallacy applies to relationships just as much as it applies to bad investments. The time you've already spent is gone. The question is, what are you going to do with the time you have left? Because here's what I know for certain. You didn't survive everything you've survived, learn everything you've learned, grow into the woman you've become just to spend your remaining years being manipulated by someone who sees your strength as an opportunity for exploitation. You've earned the right to demand reciprocal love. You've earned the right to expect consistency, honesty, and genuine respect. You've earned the right to have a partner who adds to your life rather than extracting from it. And you definitely, absolutely, without question, have earned the right to trust your own perception of reality. So I'm going to leave you with this. The love you deserve exists. It might be hard to believe right now, especially if you're coming out of or currently in a toxic relationship, but it exists. It's patient, it's honest, it's generous, it's stable, it's consistent, it respects your autonomy while creating genuine intimacy. It celebrates your whole life while being part of it. It makes you feel more like yourself, not less. And the first step toward finding that love is refusing to accept anything less, which means recognizing these 6 toxic behaviors for what they are, manipulation disguised as love, and having the courage to walk away when you see them. You are not too old to start over. You are not too damaged to be loved well. You are not too complicated for someone to choose you consistently. You are not too much or too little or too anything. You are enough, exactly as you are, and the right person will know it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this hard work of becoming wise to manipulation while staying open to love. Thank you for being part of this community. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue building the knowledge and strength you need to protect your heart without closing it. Remember, toxic behaviors disguised as love are still toxic, no matter how convincingly they're packaged. Trust your wisdom, trust your experience, trust yourself. Until next time, take care of your heart. It deserves your protection.